Hey there, everybody. This is Kristen from Teaching Balance, and I am here with you with this week's mindfulness meditation practice. And we are now in the month of February, the month of love, all things romance, and as a result, it always seems very fitting for our Teaching Balance theme to be connected to that in some way. But of course, a lot of what we focus on has the first word self. So instead of being about others, it is an invitation for you to enhance your self-love this month. Now, we're going to explore this from a few different angles, as we always do. So for this first week, I thought it would be useful for us to talk a little bit about what I think is a pretty essential component to self-love, which is self-acceptance. And really, when we get into it, the idea behind self-acceptance is to accept yourself as you are now. So not when you, I don't know, what are the things that people want to do? Not when you've, gotten a certain time in some sort of a running race, or not when you've lost 10 pounds, or not when you've, achieved some other goal, or whatever it might be. You get the idea. Not then, now, just as things are. And I know that for many of us, we tend to put these conditions on ourselves regarding okay, I'll be okay with myself when, or things will be all right when. And the problem with that, of course, is that, in some ways we never really get there because it's a moving target, right? There's always something else to theoretically be reaching for, and that's okay. And at the same time, it's also not serving us to deny ourselves this acceptance of who we are, where we are at in this moment right now. It is really just an unfortunate circumstance, and I speak to this for myself as well, where there is this tendency to deny yourself very, very important mental and emotional support just because you have, I guess you could say, withheld this complete self-acceptance based on some sort of a condition that you've come up with for whatever reason, or maybe the world has come up with it, or some other person has come up with it. So that's really what we're going to explore today. And we're going to do that first with our invitation for the week for you to reflect on, are there ways that you have been putting these conditions on yourself? And if so, can you look at that in some way and perhaps begin to loosen that, or play with, maybe one day a week, just unconditionally accepting yourself and seeing what that feels like, or whatever it might be. So we're just trying to shake off these mental habits that, we often don't realize until we start looking at them and reflecting on them. And in addition to exploring that just in a more cognitive, reflective way, we're also, for the second half of our practice today, I'm going to do a self-compassion exercise or practice from Kristen Neff. And I've talked about her before, her work in self-compassion. There's tons of stuff out there. It's just Kristen spelled the same way as me, and then Neff. There's tons of stuff out there. So we're going to finish with that. First part will be a traditional sit. Second part will just kind of work in some of this self-compassion stuff, which, not surprisingly, has a lot of self-acceptance in it. So I'm going to go ahead and start our timer. You know how these things go. Beginning by taking a few deep, slow belly breaths. Either closing the eyes or lowering the gaze, whatever feels right to you. And finding that posture, if you're seated, that feels upright but not rigid. You're not slumped over, but you're also not really tight. It's that middle way, that in between. And the other way you can think about that is one of my favorite phrases regarding posture: sitting in a way that exemplifies your inherent dignity, which is also, I think, related to this delightful idea of completely unconditional self-acceptance. Since I'll be doing more talking for the second half, I'm going to have us slide into this first half pretty silently. I might poke my voice in there, here and there, but let's go ahead and just allow this to be a lovely opportunity to rest and to settle. And as you continue to cultivate this mindful awareness, resting in the present moment and noticing when your mind is lost in thought, and then just bringing it back. Let's just hold that silence just for half a minute more, and then we'll transition into this self-compassion practice. And so for this self-compassion practice, I'm going to invite you to bring to mind a very small challenge that you are currently dealing with. And I emphasize small, not any big issues or problems. Could even just be something small that happened today, or a small ongoing issue that you're dealing with. We want to pick up the 5-pound weight, not the 50-pound weight. And I'd like you to just visualize the situation itself. And if you care to, even putting yourself in that situation and picturing in your mind what the situation was or is, where it takes place, and also noticing as you are visualizing it, perhaps even hearing some sort of a dialogue, how that feels. What does it feel like to be dealing with this smallish challenge? And if you care to, for the rest of this practice, if you'd like to put one or both hands in your heart center, you can. It's optional. And you can start out that way, and if your hand gets tired, you can set it down. But as you bring to mind how it feels to be dealing with this challenge, I'd like for you to begin just by acknowledging the fact that it is hard. I know we're not going deep with the big stuff, but really, even the little stuff. If you're anything like me, it all adds up. So allowing yourself to acknowledge and saying in your mind, this is hard. You might even go so far as to say, this is a moment of suffering. I wish I didn't have to deal with this. And I think it's really important for you to allow that acknowledgement. Even though people have bigger problems, it doesn't mean you need to minimize your own experience and your own challenges. Allow yourself to acknowledge it. And next, as you acknowledge this challenge, allowing yourself also to realize that you are not alone. Other people have dealt with something similar, will deal with something similar, or are dealing with someone similar. So saying to yourself, moments like this are a part of the human experience. Life is challenging. I'm not the only one dealing with things like this. And then considering the fact that you're not alone, and also acknowledging the fact that sometimes we're hardest on ourselves when we're dealing with challenges, the opposite of what you would think. And so as you acknowledge this challenge and realize that you're not alone in facing it, I'd like for you to extend some kindness to yourself. Even saying in your mind, may I be kind to myself as I deal with this challenge. And may I accept myself in this difficult moment as I am. Letting go of any conditions of expecting yourself to be handling it better or that you shouldn't have to deal with it in the first place. And instead, just allowing your heart to extend out warmth, kindness, and acceptance to yourself in this moment without any conditions whatsoever, especially now as you're dealing with this challenge, and holding that compassion, kindness, and acceptance until you hear the bell. So as I pointed out at the end of that practice, sometimes we are the least accepting of and the least kind to ourselves when we're dealing with a problem or a challenge. And around, as I said, sometimes it's about beating ourselves up because we shouldn't have allowed ourselves to get into the situation, or beating ourselves up because we're not handling it right, or who knows. But it's times like those more than ever that we really need to be extra kind to ourselves and extra accepting of how it is, how we are, even though it's not how we would perhaps prefer it to be. So as always, thank you so much for taking this time for yourself, and thank you for allowing me to accompany you on this journey, and I will see you next week. Take care. Bye.